It started with the hum of a phone against a nightstand. That distinct, vibrating buzz that usually signals a late, night work email or a wrong number. But it was barely 9 o'clock on a Saturday. I reached for the phone, the blue light stinging my eyes in the dark bedroom. It was a notification from Instagram. My sister, Elena. I almost swiped it away. I knew where they were tonight. My parents' 30th wedding anniversary. I knew because I had sent a card and a check earlier that week. I knew because I had asked 2 months ago what the plan was. Oh, nothing big, my mother had told me, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper she used when she was managing expectations. Dad's hip is bothering him. We just want a quiet dinner, just the two of us. Honestly, we're too tired for a fuss. I respected that. I understood that 30 years is a long time and they aren't young anymore. So, I stayed home. I ordered takeout, watched a movie, and felt a warm, quiet sort of happiness that they were having a romantic evening. Then I opened the notification. It wasn't a photo of two elderly people eating soup in a quiet booth. It was a panoramic shot of a banquet hall. There were fairy lights strung across the ceiling. There were balloons, silver and pearl white, and there, crowded around a large round table, was everyone. My Aunt Sarah, my cousins from upstate, neighbors I had grown up next to, my parents, looking radiant and healthy, holding champagne flutes. And right in the center, with her arm draped possessively over our mother's shoulder, was Alana. The caption read, 30 years of love. The whole family together to celebrate the people who started it all. Fen family first, Faye blessed. I stared at the screen until the backlight timed out and the room went black again. The silence in my apartment suddenly felt very heavy. It wasn't the silence of peace anymore. It was the silence of being erased. For the first 10 minutes, I didn't feel angry. I felt confused. I actually checked the date on the post, thinking maybe this was a throwback picture, or maybe a surprise party thrown by someone else that I just hadn't been told about in time. I started rationalizing. I told myself it must have been a last-minute thing. Maybe the cousins were in town by accident, and they threw this together. Maybe Mom didn't want me to drive 2 hours in the rain. I convinced myself they were protecting me. They know how busy work has been. I whispered to the empty room. They didn't want me to feel obligated to come. I tried to swallow that lie. It tasted like ash. Because deep down, underneath the layers of excuses I had built for them over 3 decades, I knew exactly what this was. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern. It started when we were kids, though it was subtle back then. It was the way the volume on the TV went up when I talked about my science fair project, but the whole house had to freeze when Alina practiced her flute. It was the way my grades were expected, but hers were celebrated. If I got an A, it was, that's good, keep it up. If she got a B, they took her out for ice cream to cheer her up. I grew up thinking that I was just the steady one. The low-maintenance one. I took pride in it, actually. I was the rock. I didn't need the applause. I told myself that being independent was a badge of honor, not a symptom of neglect. But as we got older, the dynamic shifted from neglect to transaction. I realized, staring at the ceiling that night, that I couldn't remember the last time my father called me just to ask how I was. I checked my call log, 3 weeks ago. The water heater is acting up. Do you know a guy? 2 months ago. We're a little short on the property tax this year. Can you float us until the pension clears? 5 months ago. Alana needs a deposit for her new apartment. Just a loan, she'll pay you back. She never paid me back. Every conversation we had was a prelude to an ask. I was the wallet. I was the tech support. I was the crisis manager. Elena was the daughter. I remember a moment from last year that should have been the final straw. I was having coffee with a colleague, David. He's older, a mentor of mine. I was complaining about how exhausted I was because I'd spent my entire weekend helping my parents move furniture, while Alina was too stressed. With her yoga instructor certification to help, I laughed it off, saying, that's just how they are. They rely on me because I'm the capable one. David put his coffee cup down. He didn't laugh. He looked me dead in the eye and said, they don't rely on you because you're capable. They use you because you're available. There is a difference between being loved and being useful. That sentence had been rattling around in my head for a year. I had pushed it away. I didn't want to believe that my utility was the only currency I had in this family. But looking at that photo, at the champagne, at the smiles, at the sheer effort that went into organizing a party that explicitly excluded me, I couldn't push it away anymore. I zoomed in on the photo again. I saw the dress my mother was wearing. It was beautiful, silk, navy blue. I bought that dress. I had sent her a gift card for her birthday specifically for something nice to wear. She was wearing my money at a party I wasn't allowed to attend. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a tightening that made it hard to breathe. But I didn't scream. I didn't call them. I did one small thing. I opened the comments section on Alina's post. It was filled with heart emojis and comments like, "Beautiful family," and "So glad everyone could make it." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed out 3 different comments. The first was angry. The second was sad. I deleted them both. I typed a third one. Calm, factual. Restrained. Glad the quiet dinner for 2 turned into such a beautiful celebration. The decorations look lovely. Happy anniversary. I hit send. Then I put the phone on Do Not Disturb and went to sleep. I didn't sleep well, but I didn't wake up to check the notifications. I waited until morning. When I turned my phone back on, the world had exploded. 17 missed calls. 12 texts. The first few were from Alina. "What is wrong with you? Why would you post that? You're making us look bad." Then, my mother. "It was a last-minute surprise. We didn't want you to drive all that way." Take that comment down. People are asking questions. Then, my father. "You are being incredibly selfish. This was your mother's night and you're making it about you." Selfish. That was the word that broke the spell. I looked around my apartment. I looked at the modest furniture I owned because I sent so much money home. I thought about the vacations I didn't take so I could help them with their car payments. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and I watched the messages roll in. They weren't apologizing. They weren't explaining why I was excluded. They were panicked because the image, the perfect family image, had a crack in it. I wasn't a person to them. I was a prop that had gone off script. I didn't reply to the texts. I didn't call them back. Instead, I opened my banking app. I had a standing transfer set up for the first of every month. It wasn't a small amount. It was designed to help them with their living expenses. I clicked cancel. Then I went to the shared family phone plan, the one I had been paying for since I was 22 because it's just easier if you handle the tech stuff. I initiated the transfer of billing responsibility to my father's email. I wasn't doing this to be mean. I wasn't doing it to punish them. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. If I wasn't family enough to be at the table, I wasn't family enough to pay for the meal. 2 days later, the quiet phase ended and the rage began. My mother called me from a number I didn't recognize. A neighbor's phone, probably, assuming I blocked hers. I answered. "How could you?" She sobbed. "Your father is so embarrassed. Aunt Sarah called and asked why you weren't there. You made us look like liars." "You told me it was a quiet dinner for 2, I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me how steady it was. "We were trying to spare your feelings," she shouted. "We knew you wouldn't fit in with that crowd." It was mostly your sister's friends and our old crowd. You're so serious all the time. You bring the mood down? There it was. The truth line. I wasn't excluded because of the drive. I wasn't excluded to save money. I was excluded because I reminded them of reality. I was the one who knew the debts. I was the one who knew the medical issues. Elena was the fantasy, I was the utility bill. "Understand?" I said. "I won't bring the mood down anymore." "You need to turn the money back on," she demanded, her tone shifting instantly from victim to aggressor. "The mortgage is due in 10 days, you can't just abandon us." "Ask Elena," I said. "Elena doesn't have that kind of money." Then maybe she shouldn't have thrown a banquet. I hung up. The weeks that followed were difficult. I won't lie and say I felt triumphant. I felt like I was mourning a death. I was mourning the parents I wanted, not the ones I had. I had to block them on everything. The guilt trips were relentless. They sent flying monkeys, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sending me messages about duty and blood. But I held the line. About a month later, I was at the grocery store. I ran into a woman who had been at the party. A neighbor from my childhood. She looked at me with this pitying, sad expression. She reached out and touched my arm. "We missed you at the party," she said softly. "Your mother said you were too busy with work to come. She said you've become very corporate and don't have time for family anymore." I felt the old urge to explain, to defend myself, to pull up the receipts and show her the truth. But I looked at her and I realized it didn't matter. "I hope they had a wonderful night," I said. I paid for my groceries and walked out. It's been 6 months now. My savings account is growing for the first time in my life. I'm planning a trip to Italy. Just for me. The silence is still there. But it's different now. It's not the silence of being ignored. It's the silence of a library. It's the silence of a sanctuary. I heard through the grapevine that they're downsizing. They're selling the house. Elena couldn't cover the costs, and without my monthly rent, the math didn't work. I feel a pang of sadness when I hear that, I do. But I don't reach for my checkbook. I realized that by paying for everything, I was buying their love. But the price of the product kept going up, and the quality kept going down. I stopped shopping at that store. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to accept that you are an orphan with living parents. I chose peace. It cost me my family, but looking back at the price I was paying to keep them, I think I got a bargain. What would you have done in my place? Was I wrong for choosing peace over their approval? I didn't expect the silence to last forever, though. Nature abhors a vacuum, and toxic families abhor a lack of drama. About 8 months after the anniversary party, the health scare card was played. It's the trump card in every dysfunctional family's deck. I was at work when I got the call from Elena. Her voice was trembling, high-pitched and breathless. "It's Dad," she said. "Chest pains ambulance. We're at Mercy General. You need to come now." My stomach dropped. No matter how much distance you put between yourself and your past, the biological wire is hard to cut. Fear spiked, hot and immediate. I left work. I drove to the hospital. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. For a brief, foolish moment, I thought maybe this is it. Maybe mortality puts things in perspective. Maybe we can start over. When I walked into the waiting room, the tableau was set. My mother was weeping into a tissue. Elena was pacing on her phone. When my mother saw me, she didn't hug me. She didn't look relieved. She looked at my purse. "Did you bring your insurance card?" she asked. Her eyes were red, but her voice was sharp. "Dad's supplemental lapsed last month. They're asking for a deposit for the private room." I stopped walking. I was 10 feet away from them. "How is he?" I asked. "Is he okay?" I was a panic attack. Elena snapped, lowering her phone. "But they want to keep him for observation because of his blood pressure, which wouldn't be so high if he wasn't stressed about money." She glared at me. The accusation hung in the sterile air like the smell of antiseptic. They hadn't called me because they needed a daughter to hold their hand. They called me because they needed an admin to handle admission. I looked at my mother. "I'm glad he's okay. But I'm not putting my card down." My mother's face crumbled, not into sadness, but into that familiar, twisted scowl. "He is your father. He raised you. And I've paid for that upbringing 10 times over," I said softly. "Use the money from the house sale? That's tied up in escrow," she hissed. "We have nothing liquid right now. Just put it on your credit card. We'll pay you back when the house closes." "We'll pay you back." The chorus of my adulthood. "No," I said. The word hung there. It was small, but it felt heavy. "I'm here to visit," I continued. "I'm here to sit with him. I'm here to bring him water. But I am not here to pay." My mother stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She looked at me with a coldness that I will never forget. It was the look you give a stranger who has bumped into you on the subway. "If you aren't gonna help, then leave," she said. "We don't need an audience. We need family." That was the moment the last thread finally snapped. I realized then that family, in their dictionary, was a verb. It meant to provide. It didn't mean to love. I turned around and walked out of the hospital. I didn't look back. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, just breathing. I didn't cry. I felt lighter. A few months later, the holidays approached. This is usually the hardest time. The commercials, the music, the societal pressure to gather. I had plans to go to a cabin with a few close friends, people who knew the story, people who didn't ask, "But have you tried talking to them?" 2 days before Christmas, a letter arrived, not a text. A handwritten letter on my mother's stationery. I sat with it for a long time before opening it. I expected an apology, maybe a plea. It was neither. "Dear High Name, we are willing to put the past behind us. The holidays are for forgiveness. We are having dinner at Alina's new place at 4 p.m. We expect you to be there. Please bring the dessert and, if you can, that vintage wine Dad likes. Let's start fresh. Love, Mom." We are willing to put the past behind us. As if I was the one who had sinned. As if I was the one who needed forgiveness. They were graciously offering to let me back into the fold, provided I brought the expensive wine and played by the old rules. They weren't missing me. They were missing the dynamic. They were missing the punching bag. I walked over to my shredder. I didn't burn it. I didn't frame it. I just fed it into the machine. The whirring sound of the blades slicing through the heavy paper was the only response they were going to get. I didn't go to Alina's. I heard later, from that same neighbor, how the dinner went. Apparently, it was a disaster. Without me there to absorb the tension, the dynamic shifted. The triangle was broken. My father, stressed about their dwindling funds, started nitpicking Elena. Elena, who was used to being the golden child, didn't have the stamina for criticism. She snapped. There was a scene, tears, screaming. My mother apparently lamented loudly that everyone has abandoned us. When I heard that, I felt a strange surge of empathy for my sister. She was finally experiencing the reality of our parents without the buffer I provided. She was realizing that the spotlight she had coveted for so long was actually an interrogation lamp. She texted me a week later. They're driving me crazy. Mom calls me 5 times a day. Dad complains about the apartment being too small. How did you do this for so long? I looked at the message. Part of me wanted to save her. Part of me wanted to say join me, walk away. But I knew she wasn't ready. She still needed their approval more than she wanted her freedom. I replied, it takes a lot of practice. I didn't offer to help. I didn't offer to take a shift. I have my own life now. Last week, I finally took that trip to Italy. I was sitting in a cafe in Florence watching people walk by. I saw a family, a mother, a father, and a daughter about my age. They were laughing. The daughter was sharing a gelato with her dad. There was no tension, no transaction, just easy, simple affection. For a second, I felt that old ache, the grief of what I never had. But then I took a sip of my wine. I paid for this wine. I paid for this trip. I paid for the peace of mind that allowed me to sit there without checking my phone, without dreading a notification, without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I realized that I had spent my whole life trying to buy a seat at a table where I was never going to be served. I built my own table now. It's smaller. It's quieter. But everyone sitting at it is happy to see me, not just what I can do for them. The anniversary photo still exists somewhere on the internet, I'm sure. A frozen moment of a perfect, happy family. But I know the truth about pictures. They're flat. They have no depth. I live in 3D now. And it's beautiful. So I ask you again, is it selfish to save yourself from a sinking ship, even if your family is the one drilling the holes? Or is that just survival?